Hi everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Business Events podcast, where we will interview experts from academia and professionals regarding the challenges and opportunities that COVID-19 brought to the business events industry. Today, we have the pleasure to have with us Ed Tranter, owner of 73 Media. Ed, welcome to our podcast, and thank you so much for accepting to be our first guest.
Thank you. Very honoured to be the first one out.
Thank you. We are very pleased to have you with us. So, well, you are one of the leading events professionals in the UK. And how do you view the status of the industry at this moment?
I think, well, there's only one way to describe it really, which is horrific. Yeah. I think, you know, there's lots of people who have done different things to try and mitigate the issues that we're all finding at the moment, but the reality is, you know, no one's run an event really since March, and it's had a seismic impact on businesses. I mean, Informa, who are the biggest events company in the world, obviously a UK business, posted a £700+ million loss for the first 6 months of this year. So, you know, that kind of puts it in context. I think it is really tough. I think it actually the biggest, or not the biggest, but one of the biggest issues I think is going to be the impact on our supply chain. Because as event organisers and event owners, we own data, we work with communities, which means we can do these virtual things. We can still connect, we still can generate an income whilst we're waiting and mitigating before things come back. But if you're a stand builder or a graphics company or an electrics company or a furniture company, you're getting nothing because none of us are doing anything. You don't have this, you know, the worst word in 2020, pivot. You don't have this pivot opportunity in those situations. And without that amazing supply chain supporting us, we can't run our events. So I think there's going to be, and I would like to see the government do more for the supply chain and for the events industry as a whole, but it's a tough landscape. There are some signs of recovery now, which is really great. And I think, you know, it will come back. If there's one thing that 9 months of Zoom meetings has shown me, this is not the future. You know, if you can't start everything going, can you hear me? Are you on mute? Can you see me? Sorry, my camera's not working. I mean, that's just, it drives you insane. I mean, it's been amazing to have this technology because lockdown would have been so much worse in terms of human connection without it, but it's not the same as being face to face with people.
Yes, definitely. Xavier Vidares, get on.
Yeah, completely. I like this answer a lot because it's related as well with where we're indeed thinking all this time. Now we found indeed on your website this case study, the virtual rugby show, and I have a question. Indeed, how the shift to online events has worked so far? No, do you have much experience within this realm before? And yeah, you are already answering a bit around this question. If you can tell me, if you can tell us a little bit more about this, please.
Yeah, sure. So I think, in all honesty, I think we're all experts in virtual events now. If anyone asks, I'm sure there's a lot of LinkedIn profiles that have now got expert in virtual events written on it. I don't think any of us were. Well, actually, there were some people that had been specialising and advocating for virtual events for many years, but in the traditional event organiser, where we mean event as a physical engagement and bringing people together, for the most part, we didn't do them. There would be, you know, virtual event would really be a webinar at best, and the technology that's coming through now is transformational. And as you cited there as an example, the rugby show was supposed to be a physical event for several thousand people, a consumer event all about the game of rugby. Now, we obviously couldn't run it, so we chose to do the event online. We chose to do it as a virtual platform. And even that, you know, the platform that we used, you know, I always liken platforms to being your venue, your virtual platform. But the platform we used, which we used in June, hadn't actually meant to be launched until July, but they launched it straight away when lockdown happened. And I read in the papers last week that that particular platform, which only launched really in March as a new thing, is now worth $2.6 billion. Wow. So they've done very well. I wish I'd thought of that now. So that it's that Minecraft of the two things I wish I'd invented. So, but with the virtual platforms, we wanted to maintain an engagement. We wanted to be able to communicate with our audience. We wanted to continue and build a brand, and we couldn't do that physically. So either you just wait for a year doing nothing, or we chose to deliver the event. And it was an exciting thing to do. It's if anything, to be honest with you, I thought it was more stressful than doing a physical event, because virtual events are very unforgiving. If you have several thousand people come to something and it's physical, and there's an issue and they're in a conference session and there's an issue with the AV and someone rocks up to go and fix it, everyone talks amongst themselves, they look around, no one's bothered. If you're online and suddenly your screen goes blank or something freezes for 5 minutes, they'll all switch off. You can lose people that quickly. And so the medium is very different in terms of engagement and retention. Also, I think one of the big things is, and I still see it, that people think, I'm going to take my physical event and make it virtual, and then they try and lift the physical and just drop it online exactly as it was before. And that's not how the medium works. You've got to think about it from a content perspective. There's huge opportunities. So the breadth of people you can get in terms of speakers is global, because the rugby show is a great example. In the end, we could have gone safe, we could have gone pre-recorded, but I wanted experience, I wanted engagement. So we ended up doing multiple stages over 3 days with 63 speakers, and we did it 95% live to camera, which was more than a little exciting, I won't lie. And there are a couple of moments which I can talk about now. I was kind of like this at the time, where, the thing they were trying to show us didn't work, and we had to find ways around that really quickly. And so it was not really spotted by the audience, but those things behind the scenes getting your heart pumping. But for us, it worked really, really well. It engaged with the audience. We were able to raise money for charity. It opened different ways for us to engage from a business model perspective. And also, one of the key elements for it was that it was our first step really into being a content producer rather than just an organizer. When we run our conferences and workshops, it's obviously great value content, whether it's B2B or in consumer, but particularly B2B, you drag people in, you get them there engaged and enthused because of the quality of people they're going to hear from, who are going to make them think about their businesses differently and add value. And that content, when it's in a live event, is great for that moment. And then really it's lost, because very few of us actually transfer that content afterwards, because it's not set up, the cameras aren't there. It's a cost that people don't carry in B2B events on the whole. So all we use it for is to get that 3-minute summary video with jazzy music over the top to tell everyone how brilliant it was. If you weren't there, why you should come next time. Whereas now, doing it in this setting, where you can have backgrounds and cameras and lights and all these other things that we hadn't invested in before, actually it becomes programming. So for us with the rugby event, we ended up with 50 pieces of between 30 and 45 minutes of content that we bookended, that's got its beautiful background, it's got intros and outros, it's got all these different things, recorded at high quality, and now it's programming. So we're now releasing that out to the community long after the event has finished, and still adding value. So I think there are opportunities with it, but the biggest issue is that it's, commercially speaking, the model is not there yet, where it's a fraction of the revenue that you would get from a physical event, and that's the biggest issue.
Yes, and let's get back to the status of the industry in the UK. Do you, in your opinion, has the UK government provided proper support for business events professionals hit by COVID-19?
Not remotely. So my short answer is they've been largely rubbish. So I think the challenge is that government doesn't understand business events. I think they don't understand. They look at events. So if you see the Prime Minister or Rishi Sunak or whoever being interviewed, and they'll say, well, you know, the events industry is blah, blah, blah. And then they'll say, well, it's worth 80 billion. And when they say that, sometimes it's great to have a big number. 80 billion sounds like a huge amount of money. You can't ignore 80 billion. That's the impact. But when you put in hospitality, weddings, business events, consumer events, awards, festivals, when you put everything together, actually they all have very different needs and they all have very different impacts on the economy. So when you put them all together, when they support one thing, which they did, which was hospitality, they then feel they've supported everything, because we came at them with an 80 billion number and they said, well, we've already covered that. You know, we've already done everything for hospitality. I'm not a party planner. You know, I'm not a wedding planner, despite what sometimes my wife's friends think I am. You know, that is not what I do. What we do is we do business events on the whole, consumer events as well, but largely business events. And those events actually have an impact on the industries that they serve. They are transformational. Business is done. This isn't just a case of revenue generated and having a nice day. This is about, I think it's something like 26 billion for conferences and business events, exhibitions, that is generated in the UK. That's the impact it has, but it's not the impact it then has on that industry. People change the way their industries work. They see opportunities that develop new markets. Those things have a direct impact on the economic growth and recovery in a way that nothing else really does. I firmly believe that sporting events, music events, and all those things, the ballet, the theatre, all the arts, is hugely important to the mental health of the nation. So that needs support as well. But because we're talking about business events here, I'll focus just on those. And business events have a transformational impact that none of the others do in terms of improving and growing the economy. And you've only got to look at the numbers to see how much that is needed. So it feels to me like the government don't understand the separation, don't understand the impact, and haven't seized the opportunity that lots of other countries have. So France, for example, Germany, around Asia, around the world, lots of countries, their governments made, even during lockdown, business events an exemption in terms of travel, or allowing for larger numbers, or providing pots of money for investing in business events because it helps the economic growth.
Great, thank you so much. There were also like lots of people, and I was one of them. Which, like, when the support was announced, and I was looking, oh, will I be able to like apply for any support from the government? And it was nothing. So, and I know that there are many more people like me, even in other industries, who were not able to get any support from the government, and that puts us all in very, very difficult situations professionally. Yeah. I'll get from this like to my next question, and then Shabi, you will go. So are there any strategies that you, for example, as an events professional, put in place to cope with this pandemic, and what could you tell us about it?
I think I often think of the word strategy as being something that you're planning for in a known environment. Mm-hmm. I think this has been more crisis management than it has been strategy. Okay. Mm-hmm. Because no one planned for a global pandemic. Even when it first came out, you know, the inference in the papers, and I was one that thought that as well, but the inference in the papers seemed to indicate that it was basically the flu, you know, and everyone's going, oh, we're going to get the flu. And it's like, well, everyone gets the flu anyway. What are you talking about? And then obviously it became far bigger than that, and the reality of it kind of hove into view. But strategically speaking, I wasn't planning for the entire world's event industry to shut down overnight and then not reopen for 9 months. Nobody plans for that. What you then have to do is you have to, you curl up in a ball, suck your thumb under your desk while rocking back and forth and crying for about 5 minutes, then you take a deep breath and you think, right, how are we going to get through this? It's an open-ended thing. We don't know. Even now, we don't know. You know, the government announced yesterday that events can go ahead in these criteria, up to 4,000 people outside, up to 2,000 people inside, within certain criteria. We don't know what those are yet. But that's in tier 1. In tier 2, it's half that. In tier 3, it's none at all. Those tiers will change at any given point. So whilst it's great news that we can open again, the reality is, in a lot of ways, it's not going to change anything, because no one can plan for an event where suddenly your event's in a different tier overnight because of a small spike and your event can't happen anymore. People aren't going to commit to that. Exhibitors aren't going to commit to that. Sponsors aren't. People aren't necessarily going to attend in the same way. So there's still challenges there. So for us, like any business, it was immediately looking at all of our costs, looking at all of our liabilities, looking at our cash flow, and looking at what we could do instead. Because if we didn't do anything at all, you know, this business wouldn't be here anymore. Simple as that. So, like many people, unfortunately, we held on as long as we could, but we had to reduce our head count, which was heartbreaking, because all the people that we had, we wanted to keep. We had good people, you know, who didn't do anything. They did nothing wrong. They didn't deserve any of this. It's nobody's fault. It's just how it's happened. And then once you've got your business in a situation where you can map out in terms of cash flow and management where you're going to be and how long you can keep going for, you then need to look at what else you're going to do. And in our case, we're very fortunate in that we are an event organizer, in that we own our own events and run them ourselves, but we're also an event agency. So we work for other people. We deliver events for other people. Now, on March the 18th, I was on a site visit in Miami Beach, looking at an event that was supposed to run in October in Miami. By the 20th of March, I was at Miami Airport desperately trying to get on a plane to get out of America and get back to the UK. So it was quite a transformational few days. And we lost an enormous amount of business that closed off, clients not doing things, all these different things. So we moved to virtual pretty quickly. We learned as much as we could. We trained as much as we could. We've got a fabulous team who worked extremely hard learning all the new softwares, and they change all the time. So even, you know, we're getting updates from the platforms we use on a weekly basis where now you can do this, and now you can do this, and now you can do this. It's a bit, I always liken it to Formula One. So it's like the car by the next race is 90% different to the car at the previous race, because they're adapting it and improving it all the time. So for us, we moved into that, and that proved to be extremely useful, because there's a lot of people trying to understand and navigate their way into awards that they were running, or association events, charity events, corporate events. And we've been doing a number of those, and we ran an awards last week. We've got an awards for about 1,500 people in 2 days' time, which was supposed to be a physical event, and then it was going to be a hybrid event. Now it's purely a virtual event, but we're helping that association deliver it in a creative way, in an engaging way. And that has meant that from a business perspective, we have certainly weathered the worst of the storm, and we are now in a position whereby we are looking positive and into, you know, we are covered in certainly until the middle of next year with the business that we have and things that are going on. But everybody has to adapt. And you know, you look at Informa, if you're a business with tens of thousands of employees and you run 1,000 events and all this, you can't just go, it's all right, we'll do a few online ones. That's just not going to help you. So in their case, obviously they did a rights issue and did a share rights issue and raised £1 billion doing that. I, on the other hand, couldn't do that. If I could have done that, I wouldn't be talking to you. I'd be on a beach somewhere. So I guess it's not rocket science. It's just it's basic business practice. And necessity is the mother of invention, is the age-old phrase, isn't it? And the reality is that we've just got to do what we've got to do to keep going, and you find opportunity and you learn as you go.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yep, absolutely. And this, do you think that as well, talking about these virtual events and how these blend as well, maybe in the future that we could find? Because at the same time, don't you think that it's as well a matter of technology? I mean, we don't have yet the enough advanced ways to get people connected, but at the same time, don't you think that some of the changes could remain after this? I mean, it's exciting when you realize that you can have a Q&A and be maybe enough or operative enough, it can really work. I mean, a Q&A with someone that is in America, for example, and don't you think that maybe in the future some of these changes can remain after the pandemic, in the post-pandemic world that hopefully we'll have soon?
Yeah, hopefully very, very soon. Yes, I think for the large, it depends on style of event. I think in the business, keeping it on topic with business events, I think there will be opportunities, and I think the virtual element will remain. I think it does add a value, in my opinion. I think it is supportive from an exhibition side, B2B exhibition side. As organisers, we've always said, to all the participants, this isn't just the 2 or 3 days of the show. Oh no, this is a 12-month, 365-day experience. And the reality of that was that there was a website that you could go and read something on, which didn't get updated that regularly. There'd be a small news feed, bit of social media, and then a couple of emails, or 4 or 5 emails during the course of the year. And then the mainstay of the marketing happened 12 weeks before the actual event happened again. So it wasn't truly an engagement in that sense. Whereas the virtual event platform elements do provide you with an opportunity where you can do, round tables and discussion groups. And here's an insight into some of the things you can hear coming up. And here's some speaker intros and all these different things that provide valuable content. You can do that all the way through now, which is quite exciting. And it can allow your sponsor and exhibitor partners to participate and get access to your community throughout the year, not just when they're on site. I don't think it will ever replace, in B2B exhibition terms, I don't think you'll ever see people running that online. I mean, if there's one thing that I have yet to see anyone do particularly well, it's the exhibitor element of a virtual event, where it isn't just somebody sat in a room with a video on a screen waiting for someone to talk to them, and no one does. So I still think there's challenges there. Something will happen. There'll be a breakthrough in technology that will make it better. But actually, I think that will stay. I think in conference terms, you could see people running virtual-only events and not going back to physical in some cases. If it's a global event where people are having to travel and the networking element isn't the key element, but the content is, you're suddenly in a position where you can deliver a much stronger level of content, because you can get people from all around the world, not just the people you could get to agree to move to a specific city on a specific date. And also from an attendee perspective, particularly if they're really busy, you can suddenly attract a more senior audience of people who can't, say, travel for 3-4 days and spend that time out of the office. And then you end up in a different model. So I've seen one, for example, and I don't know if it will work or not, but one of them, a peer in the industry is doing, they've changed their conference from being 2-3 solid days to doing an hour a day for 3 weeks. So that that flips it on its head, because they're saying basically what you want is the content, and you don't want to just sit there on a screen for 7 hours a day. So why don't we just have it so you can be working, you flick it on whilst you're at your desk, you watch it, you get the value from it, and you go through, and we just arrange for the speaker to either be live or pre-recorded and then just live for the Q&A afterwards. So there's lots of different ways of doing things now, which could be quite interesting for the future. But I think in the mainstay at the moment, I mean, as soon as we're all able to go onto the Star Trek holodeck and someone's finished building that, then frankly, why wouldn't you? I mean, I'd be well up for that. That sounds really cool. But we're a long way off it yet.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, you were mentioning that yesterday the government said that some events can start like with a limited number of people. I think that before I saw something that people could organize on-site events up to 30 people, as long as people were social distancing was maintained and the venues could demonstrate that they are COVID-19 compliant. But between March and now, are there many events of this type being held in the UK? Because it's like quite a small number of people to get together.
To be honest with you, I don't know. I couldn't name any. Mm-hmm. Certainly, we haven't run a physical event since lockdown began. I don't know anyone out of my peer group or friendship group in the industry. I can't think of anybody that has run one since then. There's been a few industry meet gatherings of 30 people where we've got together as organisers or whatever. So the AEO, so the Association of Event Organisers, of which I'm a board member, they have done a few things based around virtual learning and things like that. Miller Media, who are a huge advocate of the events industry and published magazines, Exhibition News and Access All Areas and Exhibition World and Conference News. So they are very involved in the industry, and they've held a few events which I've been to where it's getting together, but not from a commercial event perspective, more from a gathering together of a community. So it's a bit, as I say, it's a bit like the announcements the government's just made. We're all excited because it's better than being told you can't do anything at all. So in order to get back to where we were, we need to take steps. And if we haven't taken any, then we're not moving. So taking a step now of saying, well, under certain criteria, it's 4,000, it's 2,000. The reality is we still haven't got a complete clear picture of what that means. So there could be other rules within that suddenly means that a B2B event with social distancing and everything else is 100 people. We don't know, and it will depend on the venue, it will depend on the spacing. But for a lot of venues, for example, they can't operate on events that small. They can't reopen just for things like that. So it's all very well saying you can do it. It was a bit like when the government initially said about theatres could have people in theatres to watch plays, and then someone took out all the chairs because most of the theatres in London are really old. So they took out all the chairs to show you the spacing, and they could fit like 12 people in. Well, once you've paid for the performance and everything else, unless you're charging 10 grand a ticket, it's not doable. And with the announcements made yesterday, Twickenham, so I'm a big rugby fan, but Twickenham, which is 80,000 seater stadium, they won't be able to open for 4,000 people. It's pointless. Whereas some will. So it will be a balancing act, and we'll find our way. But everything is about incremental steps and proving it's safe and proving the improvements are there. And there was a test event that the government called the All Secure Expo. So the industry had to put on an event with stands and people and attendees, and the government came to check it all out. And that's been approved and passed. I was at that event. There was 300 of us there. All wearing face masks and hand sanitizer everywhere and, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I know that everything is really uncertain, and that you unfortunately can't say, well, what is going to happen in the future. But do you believe that we will be able to host large business events or any other type of big events into next year in 2021?
Yes, I think is the swift answer.
Cool.
In the industry.
Thank you. That's the way to look to the future. Okay.
In the industry, you've got the people that think we're not going to do anything at all for 2021. You've got the people that are still optimistically going, well, I've got a tenancy in February, it might still happen. They're like, And so you've got optimistic and pessimistic, and I'm somewhere in the middle, I think. So do I think it will happen? Yes. I think rapid testing will make a huge difference to events, particularly. I think that's our route out. I think the vaccine progress is great, but we've also got to be realistic. The vaccine has to be stored at minus 80 degrees C, which practically no one can manage to do. So therefore, GPs can't administer it. Most local hospitals won't be able to do it. So you're talking about a situation where even if we've got a vaccine, actually administering it to the populace is really difficult. So it's not going to be like a quick thing. It's not like we're all going to queue up at the doctor's, get a jab and we're all done. It's not going to be like that. It's going to take a lot longer. It's great that it's there, but it's still a long way off. And so for me, I think that where the opportunity comes, I believe it's going to be autumn next year. I think September onwards, we'll be in a position where we can run larger and more, and we will be in, I believe then we will be able to run large events. There might be criteria and restrictions depending on what those are, but I think it's going to take us to the summer to get the vaccine elements and the administration of that process underway and organised. I think it's also going to take us that long to get everything back on track and rebuild the industry and the support and the supply chain underneath it, and for everyone, and also confidence. Just because the government says we can open doesn't mean everyone will suddenly rock up. I think if there's one thing you do see, like 500,000 people turning up at Bournemouth Beach, much to the annoyance of my mother who lives in Bournemouth. She stood at the end of her drive tutting at people as they parked on her road. So that was telling them off in no uncertain terms. But people's desire to reconnect and be out and go out is huge. And I think that will have a positive impact on consumer events, because I think as soon as people can go to the National Running Show or the outdoor show or the ski show, they will do so en masse because they just want to get out and they want to do things, and it's a personal passion. Business is different. If you were trying to do something in California, say, and saying, right, I'm going to do something based around Silicon Valley and it's a B2B event, at the moment, no one will turn up because their companies won't let them. And so there's still a time space element there, and we're not there yet. So I think these are all good progress steps. But for me, I think September is when we will start to see in the UK truly large-scale return to events. But they will be back wholeheartedly, and then we will get a spike, I think, after that, because everyone will be so desperate to get back engaging and doing business again.
Yeah, that sounds really good. It's really good to hear you and get I haven't been feeling very positive about it, but hearing you is we will be okay. We just need to be patient and get on with keep on doing what we are doing and just be resilient. Is there anything else you would like to add that you would like to say in the podcast, or you?
I think one of the overarching things, not just in our industry but across every industry, is the mental health impact that this has had. Because even if you've been fortunate enough, and I use the word sort of in inverted commas, fortunate enough to be on furlough, this, it's not, it's free money and I'm on holiday for 9 months. Actually, the reality is you're stuck in your house, in some cases on your own. You're not allowed to go anywhere. It doesn't matter that it's not about, mental health isn't just for people that haven't got any money or have financial worries. It's a high impact thing. And I know from lots of people in the industry that I speak to regularly how rife it is. So one of the big things that's been really positive is Lou Kiwanuka from Event Shaper and Helen Moon have set up Eventwell, which is a charity that is about giving basically people in the industry, giving gifts and basically support, offering levels of support to people in the events industry that don't have any. So they are able to, so it's things like if you're really struggling, you've got no financial support, there's mental health support, there's financial support, it's things like you can pledge a £15 birthday present or a Christmas present for a child that people can apply for because, through no fault of their own, they're in the circumstances that they're in. Or you can talk to someone, or you could get professional help, or you're asked for support on how to review my CV. I've been in work for 15 years. Suddenly I've got to look for a job. I don't know how. Can you help me? All those different things. So I would absolutely promote what they're doing. And if people do need it, please do reach out. But also, if you want to support something like that, the opportunity to do it is there, because it's just such an important thing. And particularly as we now come into winter, which doesn't help when we're all locked away and it's dark and it's wet and you can't go anywhere and you can't see your friends and it's Christmas and you probably won't be able, all these things mount up. So I would just strongly suggest that if anyone is struggling, please do talk to somebody. Don't suffer in silence, because you're not alone. So please do reach out if you need help.
Oh, thank you so much, Ed. It was really a pleasure to have you with us today. It was really good to meet you. We follow your work, and it has been like a real pleasure. So yes, thank you everybody for listening too. Well, our next guest is Tamara Bernstein, the Regional Director of ICCA Europe. ICCA is the International Congress and Convention Association, and we are looking forward to having Tamara with us in our second episode. If you wish to get in touch, send an email to info@thebusinesseventspodcast. Thank you for listening.